It was supposed to be a small thing. Nothing flashy. Just 8 seats at a place with linen napkins and real candlelight. My name's Aaron. I'm 38, live in Portland, Oregon, and work in graphic design. Not the exciting kind, mostly corporate logos and brand refreshes for dental chains and mortgage brokers. But I make good money, keep to myself, and honestly, I've always been a sentimental guy. So yeah, I booked a table for my birthday. Not a milestone, just a quiet middle-of-life checkpoint with people I thought cared. I wore a navy button-down shirt that I'd ironed twice. Black jeans, polished boots. I even used the cologne Marble gave me 2 Christmases ago. The table was near a window, perfect lighting, and they'd done it up beautifully. Crisp tablecloth, folded menus, polished glasses, and 8 chairs. Only one was occupied. I got the first text before I even sat down. Ryan, bro, so sorry, Jen's got a thing. Rain check. I texted back, all good even though it wasn't. Then another. My mom. Dad isn't feeling well, sweetie. Hope the dinner's wonderful. Love you. 5 minutes later, my sister. Shane's car broke down. Total chaos here. Next week. I checked my watch. I wasn't late. They were just early to bail. I waited, ordered a glass of wine, and watched the door like some poor golden retriever. Then Marble. My wife. She texted, not even a call. Hey, got stuck on a last-minute client call. Can't get away. Happy birthday, babe, 2 hearts, no punctuation. No real apology. She knew what tonight meant. I told her 3 times. The waiter came by, a polite smile masking the awkwardness of serving a party of 1. Should we wait for the rest of your group? They're not coming, I said, keeping my voice light. Turns out it's just me and this terrifying amount of cutlery. He blinked, unsure if I was joking. I ordered anyway. Risotto, because it's what I'd been looking forward to all week. When it came, I lifted my glass, cleared my throat, and said softly to the empty seats. To the no-shows, may their excuses be slightly more creative next year. A couple at a nearby table gave me a look. Sympathy disguised as curiosity. I ignored them. The food was perfect, but each bite felt like swallowing rocks. I stared at the chairs. 8 of them. 8 perfectly arranged napkins. Waiting for hands that never came. It wasn't just about the dinner. It was the fact that I had to beg these people, my people, for a night. One night. To show up. And they didn't. The risotto cooled. The wine dulled. The silence around me became deafening. By dessert, which I ordered out of spite more than hunger, I stopped checking my phone. This was what being invisible felt like. And the worst part? I was the one who set the table. I invited the silence. Paid for it, even. Happy birthday, Aaron. The waiter came by again as I pushed my dessert around the plate. Would you like anything else, sir? I shook my head. I think I'm full on emotional disappointment, thanks. He gave me an awkward smile before walking away. I reached for my wine glass, drained the last sip, and debated ordering another. What the hell? One more glass of Pinot Noir to toast the grand tradition of being stood up by every single person I cared about. Then I heard it. A trumpet. Not soft background music from the speaker system. This was real. Sharp. Clean. Echoing through the restaurant like it had no intention of apologizing for being loud. Conversations dipped. Silverware paused. Even the waitstaff looked up. And then she walked in. She wasn't dressed for this place. Jeans, scuffed boots, a brown leather jacket that looked older than me. But the way she carried that trumpet, the way her presence filled the room, it was like the restaurant belonged to her, not the other way around. She stepped into the open space between tables, lifted the trumpet again, and played. A slow, aching piece. Not anything I recognized. It wasn't sweet or polished. It was raw, heavy, like something breaking inside a song. Her eyes stayed closed the whole time, like she wasn't performing so much as remembering. The last note rang out and settled over the room like a final breath. People clapped, quiet and unsure. And then she looked directly at me. To the man at the table for 8, she said, voice clear. That was for you, Aaron. My heart hiccuped. A few people turned toward me, and I suddenly wished the floor would open up. She slung the trumpet over her shoulder and walked straight to my table like she had a reservation. "Room for one more?" she asked, already pulling out a chair. Her voice was low, smooth, not quite casual. Do I know you?" "Nope," she said, sitting anyway. "But I know what a night like this feels like, and I hate letting good risotto go to waste." I blinked. "Did someone tell you I'd be here?" She leaned forward, smirking just a little. "Maybe, maybe not. Let's just say I'm good at knowing when someone's been left holding the bag of expectations." Her confidence wasn't arrogance. It was the kind that came from living through enough bad nights to recognize another one. I should have asked more questions. Should have been skeptical. But something about her, about the timing, the trumpet, the way she looked at the empty seats without flinching, it all disarmed me. So I nodded. And for the first time that evening, I wasn't completely alone. She didn't offer her name right away. She just picked up the spare menu, flipped through it like she wasn't surrounded by a dozen untouched chairs, and said, "You should have skipped dessert. The creme brulee here's a lie." I chuckled before I could stop myself. "You eat here often?" "Only when the story's worth it." She glanced up and smiled, small, unreadable. A silence settled between us, but it wasn't awkward. She let it sit there, didn't fill it with nervous chatter or questions. Just sipped the glass of wine the waiter brought over like she belonged at that table. Finally, she said, "Sarah." "Sorry." "My name," she said, setting the glass down. "You were wondering. So, now you know." I nodded. "Aaron." "I know." Of course she did. I wasn't sure why, but it didn't feel creepy. It felt curated almost. Like I'd been plucked from a list of lost souls and handed a moment of reprieve. "You a musician?" I asked. "Jazz mostly. On the road a lot. I play in places that need the sound more than the show." That line stuck with me, need the sound more than the show. I nodded slowly, letting it sink in. I looked down at the untouched dessert again, then at the 7 empty seats. They all bailed. Every one of them. My wife, my parents, friends I've had since college. Sarah didn't flinch. She didn't say sorry either. I like that. "It's just a birthday," I added, trying to shrug it off like that made it less pathetic. "Just a birthday," she said. "That table says otherwise." I followed her gaze. The flowers, the wine, the folded place cards I'd stupidly made myself. I don't know what I thought, that maybe they'd see the effort and feel something. That maybe showing up would mean something. "I don't even know why I'm upset," I said. "Marble, that's my wife, she's always like this. Always some emergency. Always a reason I need to be patient." Sarah didn't ask about Marble. She didn't prod. Just watched me, quiet and patient, like she'd heard the song before. I kept going. I guess I thought tonight would be different. Like, maybe they'd show up and prove me wrong. Just once. I expected her to tell me they didn't deserve me or that I needed new friends. But she didn't. Instead, she said, "You set a place for everyone but yourself." That hit hard. The words were soft, but they didn't land soft. They landed like a truth I'd been avoiding for years. I stared at her, unsure how a stranger had cut so cleanly through my excuses. "I don't know how to do that," I admitted. "Set a place for myself." Sarah sipped her wine. "Then maybe tonight's the start." I sat back in my chair, and for the first time all night, the table didn't feel so hollow. I didn't know who she was beyond the name and the trumpet. But she didn't feel like a stranger anymore. She felt like someone who saw things as they were and still pulled up a chair. And right then, that was exactly what I needed. We stayed at the table long after the plates were cleared. The candles burned lower. The staff reset the surrounding tables in quiet waves, but nobody asked us to leave. Sarah swirled her wine, watching it with the kind of stillness that meant something was coming. I felt it before she said a word, the shift, the weight behind her silence. "You said your wife's name is Marble," she began, her voice gentler now, like we'd crossed into a different part of the conversation. Not small talk. Not comfort. Truth. "Yeah," I said. "Marble. We've been married 7 years. Mostly good years, I thought." Sarah gave a small nod. "You said she had a last-minute call tonight?" I paused. "Yeah. Big client thing." That's what she texted. "Why?" She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. Thick. Unlabeled. "I didn't just walk in tonight by accident," she said. "I was sent." I blinked. "Sent?" She placed the envelope on the table between us. "Bye, Theo. Your friend." My stomach tightened. "Theo? Wait, what?" Sarah folded her hands, resting them next to the envelope. "He hired my brother. Pi. Private investigator. He's been digging for months. Your friend thought something wasn't right. Said you kept making excuses for your wife, brushing off things that didn't add up. He couldn't stand watching it happen." I just stared at the envelope. It felt radioactive. Sarah continued, calm and steady. My part in this? I'm the one who gets you to sit still long enough to listen. I'm the distraction. The delivery. But I didn't expect. She didn't finish. She didn't have to. My hand hovered over the envelope. What's in here? Proof, she said. And freedom. If you want it. I opened it slowly. Inside were photos. Grainy at first, then clearer. Marble standing close to a man I didn't recognize. Then another photo, him kissing her neck outside a coffee shop. Another, her laughing, holding his hand. The last one stopped me cold. They were in a hotel lobby. Luggage stacked behind them. Her face tucked against his shoulder. There was a date printed at the bottom. 11 months ago. My throat went dry. I flipped through more. Bank statements. Transfers from our joint account to a private one in her name. Airline receipts. A one-way flight booked for 2 to Portugal next month. She was going to run. Sarah didn't speak. She didn't need to. The papers said it all. How long has she been planning this? I asked, though I already knew. Sarah answered quietly, almost a year. And the money? She's been siphoning it gradually. You probably didn't even notice. I rubbed a hand down my face, trying to catch my breath. Jesus Christ. I'm sorry, Sarah said, and this time it wasn't rehearsed or cold. It was real. I know this isn't how you wanted your night to go. But Theo, he didn't want you to find out after the fact. He said you deserved to see it coming. To have power over your own ending. I looked at her. Why you? Why not just tell me himself? Because he knew you'd deny it. Argue. Make excuses. He figured a stranger might get you to look without flinching. I nodded slowly, my eyes back on the envelope. He was right. Sarah pushed the wine glass aside. You don't have to decide anything tonight. But you needed to know. That's all this was about. Letting you know. I looked at her, everything in my chest swirling, rage, betrayal, relief, disbelief. But under it all, one strange, quiet feeling, clarity. This wasn't the end of something. It was the start. I stepped out of the restaurant into the kind of cold that didn't just bite, it settled. The folder was tucked under my arm like a bomb waiting to go off. Sarah followed, quiet but not trailing. Just close enough that I didn't feel alone. We didn't say anything at first. The air between us had shifted again, less mystery now, more weight. The kind you only carry when you've seen something you can't unsee. We ended up on a bench across the street, just outside the glow of the restaurant's windows. I sat down slowly. Sarah stood for a second before finally lowering herself beside me. She didn't look at me, just rested her elbows on her knees and stared straight ahead. After a moment, she said, "You okay?" "No," I said honestly. "But I'm not falling apart either." "That's a start." I opened the folder again and looked at one of the photos. The one in front of the hotel. Marble smiling like she didn't have a husband. Like our life didn't exist anymore. Maybe it hadn't for her in a long time. "Did you know about all this before tonight?" I asked. Sarah nodded. "I saw the pictures last week. My brother showed me the timeline. I wanted to hate her on your behalf. But it wasn't mine to carry. And tonight." She turned slightly to face me. "Tonight was about timing. You deserved to know when it still mattered. Before she made you the villain in the story she's already started writing." I sat with that. The idea that she would have spun this made me the distant husband, the one too buried in work to notice her slipping away. I was going to let it happen, I said. I was going to let her write the ending and just take it. Like I always do. Sarah reached into her coat pocket and handed me a USB drive. "Everything you need is on there. Financial records, flight logs, the second bank account, even audio clips of her calls with that guy. His name's Derek, by the way. She met him through a gallery client." "Of course she did," I muttered. "You can burn it all. Or use it. But it's yours." I looked at the tiny drive in my hand. It felt heavier than it was. "I'm not going to yell," I said after a while. "Or smash something. Or even cry." Sarah nodded slowly. "Then what are you going to do?" I looked up at the city lights, blinking against the dark. "I'm going to beat her to the story," I said. "I'm going to shut it down before she even opens her mouth. No more explaining. No more excuses. Just done." Sarah's eyes met mine. "Good," she said. I stood up. She didn't follow right away. Just gave me a look, something between respect and quiet encouragement. And then she said, "You don't owe anyone silence, Aaron." I walked away with the folder in one hand, the drive in the other, and something else blooming in my chest. Resolve. The next morning, I was at the courthouse before it even opened. Legal separation papers, emergency financial freeze forms, a statement requesting removal of joint authorization on every shared account. The clerk didn't even blink, just stamped, filed, nodded. I guess they'd seen this scene before. Probably 100 times. By lunch, Marble still hadn't noticed. By 3 p.m., I'd signed a 6-month lease on a studio above a bakery in northeast Portland. Tiny space. Exposed brick. Smelled like sourdough and cinnamon. Perfect. Around 4, I got the text. Marble, hey babe, crazy morning. Want to do sushi tonight? Face-blowing kiss. That was it. No mention of my birthday. No mention of skipping dinner the night before. Like the night never happened. Like I wasn't sitting on a folder of betrayal with her name scrawled all over it. I didn't respond. By 6, I was home, or what used to be home, packing a single duffel bag. Just the basics. Clothes, sketchbook, backup drive. The rest could rot. Marble walked in right as I was zipping up. She paused in the doorway, keys still in hand, sunglasses perched on her head like she'd just come from brunch instead of a corporate ambush. What's going on? She asked, voice high with forced concern. Are we going somewhere? I stood calmly. You're staying, I said. I'm not. She blinked, laughed nervously. What are you talking about? I walked past her, dropped the folder on the kitchen counter like a gavel. She didn't touch it. Just stared. What is this? You know what it is. Silence. Then, this is crazy. Who gave you? I froze the accounts I cut in. Signed the separation papers this morning. You'll get served by tomorrow. You can't just, Erin, be reasonable. I looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to explain anything. You don't get to rewrite this, I said. You don't get to paint me as distant or distracted. I was here. I've always been here. You were the one already gone. Her jaw twitched. This is a mistake. No, I said. It's clarity. She opened the folder, flipping through the photos. Her expression cracked, first confusion, then panic, then fury. Who's behind this? She snapped. Theo, I said. That shut her up. You think I won't fight this? She said quietly. You can try. She didn't scream. Didn't cry. She just stood there with her carefully built image crumbling, hands trembling around the proof of her undoing. I walked out the front door. Didn't slam it. Didn't look back. The next morning, Sarah showed up at my new apartment with a grocery bag, bread, fruit, black coffee in a thermos. We sat on the floor and ate like old friends instead of near strangers. No grand speeches. No questions. Just her there. Present. Like she'd promised. At one point, she passed me a plastic container of something she'd made. Lentil soup, I think. It's not revenge food, she said. It's just food. I nodded. Took a bite. And for the first time in a long time, I felt full. The studio above the bakery was small, barely room for a bed, desk, and a few shelves, but it felt like air after years of living inside someone else's expectations. The walls were white and bare, the windows streaked with morning sun and the smell of rising dough from downstairs. I bought a lamp, a chair, and a $40 rug that didn't match anything. It was perfect. I didn't do anything big right away. No dramatic makeover. No deep cleansing breath while staring out at the city skyline. I just sat at my desk and opened my sketchbook. At first, the lines didn't come easy. My hand felt stiff, like it had forgotten how to move without someone watching. But eventually, it loosened. A few logo concepts for a local print shop. Then some rough ideas for a jazz bar looking to rebrand. The emails trickled in. Clients who'd always said, if you ever go solo, call us. So I did. Freelance work meant late nights and quiet mornings. No meetings about meetings. No, can you loop Marble in on this? No compromises that dulled the work down to nothing. Just me. My name on the invoice. It felt like building something honest for the first time in years. Sarah became a kind of rhythm. She never overstayed, never pried, never turned the spotlight toward herself unless I handed it to her. She'd stop by with food sometimes, half a loaf of fresh rye, dumplings from a food cart, once a slice of pie and nothing else. We never called it a relationship. She never asked what I wanted. She just showed up and sometimes she didn't. That was okay too. One night, I found a sketch I didn't remember drawing, a trumpet resting against a chair. I'd probably made it the week after the restaurant. I couldn't stop looking at it. I texted her a photo of it with no caption. She replied an hour later. Sarah, you gave the chair shape. That's a good start. I smiled. Not everything needed a conversation. Marble texted once or twice. Her tone was neutral, like nothing had happened. Like she was confused why the world had shifted without her permission. Then came the message from my parents, we heard about the split. Call us when you're ready. I didn't reply. They hadn't shown up to dinner. They didn't get to show up now. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't checking my phone for someone else's needs. I wasn't making plans around people who flaked or guilt or vanished when it mattered. The quiet wasn't lonely. It was clean. Sarah came by one Thursday night with oranges and 2 beers. She didn't say, "You're doing better." She just sat beside me, cracked one open, and passed it to me without a word. I toasted the air and took a sip. The chair in the sketch stayed empty that night. But it didn't feel empty anymore. It had been almost 6 months since that night at the restaurant. I was working more, sleeping better, still in the same little studio over the bakery. I didn't need more space, just peace. I'd found a quiet rhythm of waking to the smell of bread, filling my afternoons with client work, and letting the evenings settle however they wanted. Then one day Sarah texted, "Sarah, got a rooftop gig Friday. Come if you want. Bring ears." No details, no address, just that. I showed up anyway. It was in the Pearl District, one of those old converted buildings with a freight elevator and a door that creaked open to a rooftop full of folding chairs, string lights, and 20 or so people in quiet conversation. No stage, no fuss. Just a mic, a stool, and a night sky hanging low with the scent of summer dust. Sarah stood off to the side, trumpet in hand, hair down for once, wearing a simple black shirt and jeans that had seen things. She caught my eye and smiled. When the crowd settled, she stepped forward. "This piece doesn't have a label," she said, "but I guess if I had to name it, I'd call it the 8th chair." My heart stopped. A few people chuckled like it was a private joke they didn't get. But I knew. I felt every word before she played a single note. And then she did. Started with one long, solitary tone, low, hollow, not sad exactly, but echoing, like absence made into music. The melody crept forward slowly, each note like a hesitant step across a memory. At one point, she paused mid-bar and let silence hang just a second longer than expected. Felt intentional, like someone had pulled out a chair and forgotten to sit. Then the music rose sharper, fuller. Not angry, not triumphant, just honest. A sound that said, "I was there. I saw you." I didn't blink the whole time. When it ended, the rooftop was so still you could hear someone sniffle 3 rows back. Sarah lowered the trumpet and stepped aside. No bow, no explanation. When she walked over to me, I stood without thinking. "That was..." She raised an eyebrow. "Too much." I shook my head. "It was everything." She leaned against the wall beside me, handed me a bottle of water like I'd just come off stage myself. "Why did you play it?" I asked after a while. "I didn't play it about you," she said. "I played it for you." I nodded slowly. "Feels like there's a difference." There is. The rest of the crowd lingered in clusters, some waiting to say thanks, others just trying to name what they'd felt. I stayed quiet, just took it in. For the first time since everything fell apart, I felt seen. Not watched, not pitted, seen. That night, as we walked down the fire stairs, Sarah bumped my shoulder lightly. "I saved you a seat," she said. I didn't answer. I just smiled and followed her down, the notes still echoing in my head. The chair hadn't been empty after all. It had been waiting, a year to the day. I stood outside the same restaurant, same black boots, same navy shirt. Pressed this time, no stray wrinkles. My hair was a little longer now. I didn't do it on purpose, just forgot to cut it. But it worked. In my hand was a reservation card. Table for 2. I walked in, and for a second the place looked exactly the same. The long wine rack, the low candlelight, the couple near the window still locked in that awkward first date smile. But then the host greeted me with a warm, "Welcome back, Mr. Langston." And I realized I wasn't the same, not even close. They seated me near the window again. Not at the 8-top, thank God. Just a small round table with 2 chairs. One of them wasn't empty for long. Sarah arrived 5 minutes later, trumpet case slung over her shoulder, red scarf loose around her neck. She sat down with a grin. "No risotto this time. I made you pasta last week. Don't ruin it with an inferior version." I laughed. "Noted." The waiter brought wine, and we clinked glasses without saying why. We didn't have to. The date said it all. "I almost didn't come," I admitted. "This place, I thought it might feel haunted." She glanced around. "And does it?" I looked at the table, the silverware, the 2 filled chairs. No, I said. It feels rewritten. Dinner was simple. Risotto anyway, for old time's sake, and a shared slice of chocolate cake. No toasts this time. No waiting for people who weren't coming. At one point, I reached into my coat and pulled out a folded sheet of sketch paper. I slid it across the table. Sarah opened it slowly. It was a drawing, black ink, clean lines. Her trumpet resting against the leg of a chair. 2 chairs total. 1 empty. 1 filled. Her eyes softened. You kept it. I updated it, I said. You were missing. She stared at it for a long time before folding it again, carefully this time, like it was worth something. You ever think about that night? She asked. Every so often, I said. Not the pain, though. More the moment I realized it wasn't about who didn't show up. It was about who did. She leaned back, eyes on me. That's a pretty good definition of change. We sat with that. Eventually, she looked down at her glass, tracing a finger along the rim. You know I wasn't planning to stay in Portland, right? I figured. I was supposed to leave the week after your birthday. I looked at her. What changed? You gave me a song. I blinked. I didn't. You did, she said. The sketch. The way you looked at that table. The way you didn't fall apart. That's music, Aaron. You just needed someone to play it back to you. I didn't speak for a while. I didn't want to break whatever quiet thing had bloomed between us. I'm not looking for closure, I said finally. Good, she replied. Closure is overrated. I smiled. You think this is a beginning? She nodded. I think it already was. You just didn't know it yet. We paid the check. No big gesture. No lingering moment in the doorway. Just 2 people who had been there when it mattered. Outside, the night was cool but kind. Sarah hoisted the trumpet case over her shoulder and gave me a sideways look. Same time next year? I grinned. Yeah, but maybe somewhere with worse lighting and better bread. She laughed and we walked off together, no ghosts behind us. Only steps forward.